Yeah, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for Demystifying Defense Contracting for Innovative Small Businesses. I am Michael Adam. I am the CEO of Adam Aerospace Corporation, also one of the founders of AeroX, joined by Elizabeth Thielen, who is the director of AeroX. Elizabeth, you want to say hello?
Welcome everybody. We're going to walk you in terms of process. We're going to have a dialogue basically with you. We'll introduce our speakers. You can ask questions anytime. Just put them in the chat. And Margaret will break in and we are going to talk about how to simplify this process, demystify it with our word, and inspire you to take some action with Department of Defense.
Awesome. Elizabeth, can you go back one slide, please?
Sure.
So today's presentation is really brought to you by a collaboration and effort between several Wisconsin-based resources. First is AeroX. You're going to hear us talk about that a lot today. We're going to try to pitch you on it and try to get you to apply to this accelerator cohort, which is coming up in February. The second week of February will begin. So AeroX is really an accelerator program, or more than an accelerator program, that aims to help companies that are looking to get into the federal contracting space. So if you're on this call and you're like, well, I don't make airplanes, or I don't make something that the Air Force is going to use, you might want to rethink that and don't count yourself out, because there are a lot of areas that the government needs new technologies in, and they're not always the obvious. And we'll jump into some of that later on. My company is going through an SBIR contract right now, so we can talk about that experience. Next is the CTC, the Center for Technology Commercialization. Idella has joined us with her team. We're really going to highlight their SBIR Ready program. It's an awesome resource. It goes in conjunction with and just a little bit past the AeroX cohort, the next cohort. Their applications, they're taking applications. They will be due soon. Idella, did you want to say anything about the SBIR Ready program and the CTC?
Sure, I'll go ahead and say that. Let me take off my mask for clarity's sake here. So yeah, so we are Wisconsin's resource, and many of you on the call may already know or have worked with CTC in the past, but what we have been doing over the past several years is unlock or help us better understand how to access innovation funding through the Department of Defense. And particularly the Air Force, because they have a unique flavor of their SBIR and STTR program. And so what we have been fortunate to be awarded a cooperative agreement through the SBA to make this much more available for Wisconsin businesses. And we are running the SBIR Ready program, which will be year 2 of running this program, to help you understand and prepare an early draft of an Air Force proposal, which would be due for the solicitation that would open in April of 2022 and be due in June. And one of the key learnings that we had in the past years is that to be competitive for the federal and the Air Force's program, you really needed to have a very clear mission-specific outcome or an alignment with your technology and your company's core capabilities. And how can you do that if you don't know many people in the military? And so we've been fortunate to work with a pilot program with the Air National Guard called ForwardWorks to try and make some of those connections and help you better understand some of the cool things that are happening with the Guard here in Wisconsin, and see if we can translate those to bigger opportunities with Guard and with big Air Force across the nation, making you much more competitive for the SBIR program. So we encourage you to reach out if you have any questions. Yes, we do have the deadline for February 22nd, which will follow the AeroX accelerator, and we pay you to do the learning, so it is advantageous. Okay, thanks.
No, thank you. And I think it's great that, Idella mentioned ForwardWorks. So ForwardWorks is a really unique resource that the state of Wisconsin has. It's actually a spark cell from the Air Force that is unique to Wisconsin. It's unique to this level of innovation. So we're really, really, really excited to be working with them and kind of going along this journey as they build their program. All right, Elizabeth, you want to introduce some of the speakers, or who'll be talking?
For sure. Well, here's our panel. Everybody can see everybody. You want to talk
I-
about your Adam
Yeah,
Aerospace actually
I'll
first?
start.
And
Yeah, sure, I'll start.
Michael's had a
So
dual role.
I have a dual role today, yes. So my name is Michael Adam. Again, I am the CEO of Adam Aerospace Corporation. We are a small business based in Wisconsin. We specialize in several blockchain technology solutions for aerospace, defense, and critical infrastructure. So, kind of a quick backstory of how this all came to be as far as AeroX and our role. We were a startup like many of you, we had a core technology solution, but it was kind of industry agnostic. Like we were serving several industries, which at first you think is great because like, oh, our customer base is huge, but can obviously become a problem when you're really trying to market and learn more about your segments. So we went through an aerospace accelerator, which no longer exists, but it was really quite evident when we were going through it. One company in that cohort was getting all these contracts from the Army. Um, and we're like, well, why is everybody else like, how is this happening? Well, he was a veteran and he knew very well the SBIR program, and nobody else even knew what that was. I had no idea what it was. Nobody else knew what it was. So when Elizabeth and I spun out the AeroX program, we knew it was critical to highlight the SBIR program, so the cohort members can go through that process and then bid on those types of contracts, which is why we're so fortunate to partner with the CTC, because they do SBIR right. They're an awesome resource. So if you see on the bottom left there, we do have a defense contract right now with the United States Air Force. We went through IDELA and the CTC's SBIR Ready program this last year, and we got an accepted contract, and we're going through that right now. Something else you should know about our company is that, besides for being innovative ourselves, we support innovators, obviously through AeroX, but we're also big on collaboration. So we keep our technology close to our vest, but we believe in giving other people's opportunities and obviously getting more opportunities ourselves by partnering with other organizations. So we love to work with universities. We love to work with other small businesses. We love to work with larger companies as well, doing pilot projects. So just keep in mind, throughout this program and presentation, if anything comes to mind, we're always happy to partner and help and collaborate. That's something we love to do.
So next, Ryan is with the Defense Innovation Unit, and I think for most people on this call, maybe you know about this, but this is an amazing resource for the United States. But Ryan is leading the new Midwest engagement. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks. No, guys, I appreciate you guys having me on. And I connected with Michael, I guess last year, right, Michael, as we initially started to look at how we were going to roll this out, and also talking about some opportunities, on their, based on their technology and things like that. But so I'm with the Defense Innovation Unit. I'm actually an Army reservist, so this is actually my reserve role right now, is to start up this new Midwest engagement activity for them. As we roll it out, we're trying to roll it out not just as the Defense Innovation Unit, but actually as, we're trying to be kind of the point of presence for the Midwest, but networking across all the different defense organizations and entities that do, kind of touch the innovation space. And that's, part of the theme here is demystifying, right? And that's one of the things we're trying to do with that presence physically, is just, simplify the access to the ability to engage directly with the DoD, because DIU, for example, we operate at kind of the far right-hand side, right, of innovation, where we're looking for commercially validated technology that's already in play. It's existent. There's an existing customer base for it, and we can just rapidly adopt that to a defense problem. But we have partners, across DoD that operate everywhere from like early idea stage and research stage, in academia, and others towards, working through challenges and things like that, plugging into the SBIR process, like we already talked about. And so we want to be able to connect companies not just with DIU, not just to what opportunity we have, but we really want to be able to point them to the best opportunity, for them to leverage to actually get a foothold in DoD and actually start to understand how to do business with and things like that, just as Michael and his team did with the SBIRs as they grew that out. And so I'll talk a little bit more as we go through this about what DIU does, but what we specifically focus on accelerating adoption of new and innovative technologies into the Department of Defense. We want to transform the capability. We try to look at how to solve problems, not just, let's not just find another piece of technology that allows us to do it the same, slightly better, but let's see if we can transform how we think about solving some of the problems that our defense mission problems, our defense mission owners kind of bring to us. And obviously through all that, we want to strengthen our national security innovation base and make us, enable us as a country, enable us as an economic powerhouse to continuously compete and hopefully out innovate, right, some of our adversaries on the global stage. And so that's what we're doing. I won't talk through the numbers in detail, but we've had a lot of success. We've seen a lot more success come to the model over the last 5 years, and we've improved. We've increased adoption rates of new technology from about under 14% when this was started back in 15, 16, to we're still not great, but we're well over 40% today in terms of this of adoption, which is excellent, and we're able to bring to bear. Our budget is relatively small by DoD standards, but we're able to bring to bear billions of dollars in investment, by harnessing both larger program office budgets from across the Department of Defense against these specific problems, but then also multiplying that with specific investment dollars coming from private industry and things like that. Obviously, it accelerates opportunity for startups if they can demonstrate that they have a market within DoD to bring in investment and gain new opportunity to continue to develop their tech. So that's what we do, and I'm looking forward to the discussion today because it fits exactly with what we're trying to do here in the Midwest. So thanks, guys.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. And like I said, put questions in there, but we're going to go to, I think, Norb is next. He has his own business, but he also works with the Defense Alliance. Welcome, Norb. You can tell us a little bit about who you are, and we can either go through the slide or come back to the slide, either which way you'd like.
Fabulous. Thanks, Elizabeth, and good afternoon, everybody. We'll come back to this slide in a little bit. As Elizabeth said, I have a consulting practice, as well as the other hat I wear is I'm part of the Defense Alliance, which is a regional innovation cluster funded by the Small Business Administration. Prior to doing this type of work, I spent 36 years with 3M in the world of tape, and also was integrally involved in the standing up of our aerospace and defense business at 3M. But specifically as it relates to the program with the Defense Alliance, we're a regional innovation cluster, and we work in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And our primary emphasis is working with small businesses and helping them commercialize a product, technology, or a service. So we're a small team, we're agile, but we directly interface with small businesses throughout the region and try to help them work the ecosystem of the federal government, and in particular the Department of Defense, on how to win in that arena. That could include working with a particular agency or branch of the military. It could include working with prime contractors, and it certainly involves doing pursuits with various business and contracting opportunities within DoD. So that's a little bit about me and about the Defense Alliance. I'll come back a little bit later, Elizabeth.
Okay, great. And I just want everybody to know, in AeroX, Defense Alliance also does one of our cohort groups, and then you get access and to all their resources as well. And there is a plethora of network with the Defense Alliance. Awesome. I'll come back to that, and we'll talk with Gwen at Rockwell. So though Rockwell and Gwen are not in defense, we also have this contracting and people, these dual use technologies that Michael referred to, and working with the corporate side. So that's the view that Gwen brings to us.
Hi everyone, I'm Gwen Peters. I work for Rockwell Automation. Would you move to the next slide, Elizabeth? Quick overview on Rockwell. You're probably familiar already, but we are headquartered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but we're, unlike some of the other big companies in the area, very global. We do business in over 100 countries, and more than half of our employees are outside the United States. We've been in business the exact number of years as Harley Davidson. So if you think of 1903, that's when Rockwell started as well. And if you move to the next slide, Elizabeth, we can divide the type of work that we do in automation really into these three categories. And the easiest way I've heard it described is we make things and we make stuff. So when you think of discrete automation, we make things like cars, and then we also make process automation. We make stuff like toothpaste, and hybrid is like we put the stuff into things. So that's a snapshot of what Rockwell does. We slice across a ton of different industries, everything from mining to chemical to life sciences, consumer packaged goods. We even automate the roller coasters at Disney and Universal Studios. So we play in a lot of places. And my role at Rockwell Automation is innovation leader. So it's my job, if you move to the next slide, it's my job to help innovators make their ideas a reality. My connection to aerospace here is I do have an aerospace engineering degree. The closest thing I did to aerospace engineering was when I worked for Solar Turbines. I worked on land-based gas turbine engines for 4 years. When I moved to Wisconsin, I started at Rockwell, and I've had various roles in operations and product management. And I think why I'm here today mostly is because of my current role as an innovation leader. I do interface quite often with startups on behalf of our company, understanding how we might leverage the technologies, making introductions, understanding how we might do some co-development or experimentation with startup technologies. And I do focus from that perspective externally, and then I also focus internally within the company, as I mentioned before, to help innovators get their ideas implemented.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. So let's get into it and talk about this. It seems like kind of a mystery and complicated to work with defense. What are some of the basic things we need to know? Let's start with Michael.
Well, as someone who just started going through this, first is where to get started, right? So for us, the easiest place to start was going through the SBIR process, the SBIR process. But it wasn't that easy, right? So we tried to do it on our own a couple times just because we heard about it, and we tried to do some applications, and we spent all this work, the first time around, and we submitted the application and then realized we didn't have the right even foundation, like cage code numbers and all these other things that you even need to register on sam.gov. And so it was really just a lot of trial and error until we met Adela's group in the CTC, and they, walked us through the process, and then we were successful in getting our first SBIR. So for us, it was just the steps to get in were literally the hurdles, the beginning hurdles you need to accomplish to even play the game, and those are several different things that you have to do and register and get to even start.
And Ryan, what would you add to that in terms of like, okay, probably most of the participants here may know those basics, but then what's another sort of tip or unlock the mystery here to working with just defense in general?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I'm going to go back and point to the SBIR process that Michael mentioned, because I think one of the biggest challenges, it's certainly one of the things that we're working on, how do we facilitate more access to with the new presence here in the Midwest. I think one of the biggest challenges is being able to connect with like problem owners in the Department of Defense, like the actual folks who are going to use your technology, right? And one of the reasons that's a challenge is because defense acquisition is so massive that you can have 2, 3, 4 layers of acquisitions folks between the actual defense end user, right, and like all the layers of different types of acquisitions activity. And a lot of times, like those acquisitions folks have no idea, like they have no idea what they're buying, right? They don't understand the technology. They don't understand the application to whatever problem set it is. So you as a new business, as an innovator, can't even get feedback immediately. Like if that's your entry point is acquisition, you can't even get solid like technical feedback on feasibility of your product. You know, what works, what doesn't. You know, is this even addressing a need that exists within DoD as a market? I think the SBIR process is a really good way to make to like you know kind of gain entry to some of those defense end users. And I don't want to discount like all the what I'll call it, since I'm a cyber guy, I'll call it like the basic hygiene of being able to do business with the Department of Defense. Absolutely, and like you gotta figure out how to get a cage code. You got to make sure you're registered in SAMS. You got to like there's a lot of little stuff like that. That would be nice if I could call them ankle biters, but it's bigger than that because you can't even really submit before that. But then I think the next step is to really you got to find your champion. And I think the way you do that is you find you work your way in and get in touch with the right kind of problem owners and end users to be able to get clear feedback on your tech, and then be able to to then inform your roadmap, inform how you're going to dev, inform your next steps. And then once you have an end user in mind, I mean, that's what DIU, half of our time is spent working with defense partners and saying, hey, what are your problems, right? Understanding what problems are out there, and then marrying those to technologies that we've found, discovered, we know exist in the ecosystem, right? So that's certainly one of the things that we try to facilitate. But the nice thing about the SBIR process is it's a broader look for the department, right? DIU is looking at one very specific defined problem, right? We're only going to take a small handful. You can have a pretty broad range of companies that go through a SBIR phase 1, right? That's going to get you some initial award. It's going to get you a little bit of experience doing business with DoD. It's going to get you connected to more defense end users. I think the other thing is to be aware of the resources that are out there, right? So there's a lot of different websites and things like that exist to just as reference points to see, hey, when is there a new SBIR announcement, right? And so I do think it's important to have someone, right, that can build the knowledge in their head of like what are the sites I need to check occasionally to see about new announcements, right? Whether it's SBIR announcements or if it's the Army's I'm gonna forget the name of it off the top of my head right now, but their innovation announcements. What were you gonna say, Michael? Did you have it?
Is it their Vulcan website?
Well, there's Vulcan. Oh, X-Tech Search is what I'm thinking of. X-Tech Search that the Army does. But the COCOMs, like SOCOM, has their own SBIR announcement page and stuff. But there are a few you can go to that try and aggregate all that. And actually, for defense, the Midwest DIU activity, we're going to try and create a sub page that aggregates all that, right? So I think that's the other thing. It's just kind of starting to get smart on that stuff. And then hopefully you can have somebody, Michael, to your point, it's an art form writing these things. Even when you're responding to a SBIR, or even when you're responding to a DIU solicitation, and it's a lot easier than responding to a massive RFP. It's still an art form. There's very specific things that are being looked for in that response to kind of get you through the wickets. And so at DIU we literally try and partner with the companies to kind of coach them through that. Without giving any favoritism to one or the other, but we understand the level of effort that takes, especially for a company where, like if you're small, you want your people building tech. You don't want them spending all their time on contracting. So, so we try and partner with them and walk them through the process, and the SBIR works the same.
So Ryan, let me jump in there. You talked about find your champion, which I also think is something that needs to be demystified. And I'm going to turn to Gwen on that, because both in defense or in corporate, you want somebody to champion, but how do I know that? So can you speak to that a little bit, Gwen? This is one of my tough questions based on
how do you find your champion?
Yeah, how do you find that? But I have to talk. I know I'm going to have to work with you first, so I need to know my customer.
Yeah, I would say I'll answer it generally and then answer it a little bit more specifically. Generally, particularly in our region, there are a lot of resources available to build and network in the tech space. We have 60 some tech meetups that meet regularly. I'm on the advisory board for Milwaukee Tech Hub, for example. That's a coalition of over 100 members, some large companies, some community members, some accelerators that, again, meet regularly to grow the tech ecosystem and are very, very happy, very approachable people, happy to help connect you. I would leverage networks like that. In fact, one of the main goals of the Tech Coalition, it's in the metrics, is to make X number of connections, meaningful connections to people every year. So in a more specific sense, it absolutely helps from my perspective if you have a personal introduction when you're calling upon a company, or I don't know the defense industry very well, so I'll speak from the company standpoint. I get more emails than I can count every week of people reaching out saying, hey, you need my tech, you need my tech. And I'll be very honest, most of them I read one sentence and that's it. If it is coming from someone that I know that has referred them to me, I will read the whole thing and I will make an honest effort to push it forward. But it is very much a personal introduction. Now, I have been on the flip side of it, where I've had a technology that I've needed, and I've been trying to find somebody who can source that technology. And as cliche as this might sound, I use LinkedIn, and I typed in what I needed, and I looked at who in my network has any type of connection to that company. And I just started going, hey, I saw you're connected to this. Is it somebody you really know, or it just happens to be somebody from online, right? And that has worked for me.
Excellent. Thank you. So it's connecting with you somehow first to get your attention through all the different resources, of course, in our ecosystem. But I know one of the things you also talked about was just, don't just come to me with my solution can solve any problem you have. So with that, I'm actually going to transition to Norb. And if you want to jump in on this kind of topic on finding that champion or knowing your customer.
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Elizabeth. I think, to build on the comments that have been made already, I think have to do, the potential supplier, have to kind of do a little bit of internal reflection and really know your strengths and really understand your business plan and where you're trying to go. It sounds really simplistic, but I work with a lot of companies, small businesses, where they've got a great technology and they're trying to find a fit for their technology in the market. And I'd like to suggest that you really need, in this particular case, to really know the DoD customer. And you need to know, I knew nothing when I started my journey 10, 15 years ago when I was at 3M. I knew nothing about the Department of Defense. I didn't know how they acquired. I didn't know how they did contracting. I didn't know how they did research and development. So I had to become a student of this customer, no different than you would any customer. But I would encourage anybody on the phone and online today to really take a hard look at trying to understand this customer, because it's complex and it will take time. And I think to build on a couple other comments, it's really incumbent upon us to really provide clear, concise communication of what exactly we're offering. What's our technology? What's our product? What's our service? Don't build a watch. Tell me what time it is. Make it clear and concise, because to the point made, there's a lot of information flowing in to these potential prospects, and you really have to have a really tight, succinct value proposition.
So Elizabeth, I just want to jump in real quick. So I love the advice. And sometimes, however, when you're working with the DoD or let's say the Air Force, it's hard to know your customer because the Air Force is so massive and there's so many divisions and there's so many units that, one could spend a decade just trying to navigate everything that's going on within, the Air Force. So It can be daunting, but just know that through the process. So let's say you submit an SBIR or SBIR application for a product you currently have, and it can be anything, right? So in our cohort right now for the SBIR that we're going through, there's mental health companies, a mental health app, there's nutrition companies, there's fitness companies. I mean, these are all things, these are all technologies and all products that the United States Air Force is looking at and have approved. So you might go in with a specific use case. Like for ours that we got awarded was blockchain-based secure data loading for aircraft. So that's like a very specific use case that we pitched. But as we're going through this process, we're finding new use cases and being asked to build those out for, so like for supply chain or for maintenance, using our exact same technology, but using it in totally different ways than we ever would have thought to have used it. So my point is, it might seem daunting to know your customer as the Air Force, but as you work with them and as you find champions and as you know, as Ryan said, find the problems within the Air Force, you may be able to adapt your technology to that.
Well, I think for people on the call, most people are going to know, or at least the business model canvas or something. You have to go through your market, and what we're saying is defense is a massive market, and you want to narrow it down and you want to understand it. Margaret, are there any questions that have come in? Who has the first question for us, our team?
No questions
Okay.
so far, but do remember you can just type in your question in the Q&A section or the chat if something
Hey,
comes.
Elizabeth, can
Yeah.
I ask a question of Ryan?
Of course.
Hey, Ryan, does it make sense if I'm a small business and I've got a capability, and yeah, I'm pursuing a specific group within DoD, but at the same time, does it make sense for me to try to team and partner with a prime contractor like one of the bigs? I mean, does that add credibility to what I'm doing and dealing with somebody like you, that I've got that type of work going on?
My short answer is yes. I think it makes sense. Whether or not it adds credibility, I don't think I'd characterize it as like it adds credibility in our view. I think it's going to open more pathways to you for accessing, the DoD market, right? I think it's less about credibility, more about it will. The one place it does. So one of the evaluation criteria for DIU when we look at companies is like the technical viability of the technology, and then company viability as like, hey, is this a company that is going to be around? They've got a solid customer base, that sort of thing. Obviously, if a big prime is leveraging that technology in a partnership, or wants to partner with them in order to solve some of the problem sets they know it exists, it does lend some credibility in that sense to the kind of the company's viability itself, and potentially the viability of the tech. But I think the biggest thing that's going to do for most smalls is, getting access to contract vehicles it can be a beastly task. And it is going to open up multiple avenues in that way. Not to mention the fact that obviously, corporate innovation is a major thing, right? And all those bigs have pretty massive corporate investment arms and things like that. And so there may be opportunity, I think, for you as a smaller business, a smaller activity, knowing that there's risk there, right? There's always a trade-off. But there's opportunity, I think, if you really want to move into this space, to get some support from those bigs as well as you make those moves. So,
In the spirit of demystifying here, what about regulations? Whether it's with Ryan or Gwen in corporates, either at your own or just from other experiences you have, what do people have to know about specific regulations or rules? Because I know defense has a lot, and different corporates have a lot. Gwen, do you want to jump in on this one first?
Rockwell is in a space where we don't directly have as many, we have certifications our products need. We have obviously security standards we're meeting, but I wouldn't call it so much regulations like you would see in a defense space. I might not be the best person to answer that question.
Okay. No, that's good to know though, that you don't have as many. Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big one, right? We talked about the hygiene before, the basic hygiene, but if you're building software, right, and you want to inject that software into a production environment for a defense customer, that's got to go through layers upon layers of accreditation, right, and use testing and things like that before it's going to get in. I think understanding, so that is one way to accomplish that is to get on a vehicle with a larger prime who can help you through that process, right? Absolutely, that's one avenue to do it. You may or may not want to do that for various reasons. Another way, though, is like if you do, so DIU, when we do our solicitations, the initial solicitation is, yes, though we're looking for validated commercial technology, so tech that exists, right, hasn't been applied to a specific defense problem yet. So we do our initial awards as prototype awards. And so if you get one of those prototype awards, we can sponsor for a lot of that, those authority to operate requirements and things like that. We can sponsor for some of the, the requirements around like CMMC compliance and stuff like that in terms of being able to secure data and that sort of thing. You can get those same sort of sponsorships by going through the SBIR process. So, Michael, I don't know if you have anything you want to add there, but you can get those sponsorships by going through the SBIR process as well. So I think vectoring into DoD through especially through like the R&D processes or some of these small business, the innovation, like we use, all of our acquisitions are done on other transactional authorities. So they're non-federal acquisition regulation-based contracting. Some of the research and development dollars that are out there can acquire on non-federal acquisition regulation-based contracting. That's a good way to be able to get in by going through contracting processes that can operate faster and that can then sponsor you for some of those regulatory requirements that you're going to need to meet as you move from initial prototyping, initial research and development into trying to transition then into like longer term production.
Right. So I'm glad you brought up SBIR again, because that's one of the main things we're focusing on. So I'm going to ask myself a question, Michael. For those of you that aren't familiar with SBIR, what is SBIR? Well, so it's a program that, so when we work with it through AeroX and the CTC, we really focus on the Air Force program through AFWorks because we know it very well. But so there's just technically 3 phases, but we'll talk about the first 2. Phase 1 is your initial application. So the Air Force usually has an open call for technology. Sometimes the calls are very specific. They're like, we need a low latency laser beam that can take down a satellite. So that can be how specific it is. But the Air Force usually has open topics, and it's, hey, I have this nutrition app that I think airmen should use, or hey, I have this blockchain solution that I think all data should be ran through the Air Force. So you write your proposal. It's in a slide deck. It's up to like 25-page slide deck. And if you're awarded, you get $50,000. So what do you do with that $50,000? The Air Force is paying you to find the customer. So you're just using that money to like go talk to people like Ryan, like Gwen said, go out on LinkedIn and maybe try to find an airman or somebody that you know and say, hey, who can I talk to that could potentially use that product? So in that phase 1, you get $50,000 just to find your Air Force customer, which is pretty cool because I don't know any other company that's going to pay you money to go find a customer. And then you go through phase 1, which we're going through right now. And, there's some homework and deliverables, but it's nothing too daunting. And the real task is finding an Air Force customer. So once you go through phase 1, you can apply it to phase 2. And in phase 2, you have to have an MOU, which is like a customer memorandum from somebody in the Air Force saying, hey, we think your technology is pretty cool. We would entertain using this if you are able to develop this. And then you apply it for phase 2. You need that MOU. And then phase 2, you can get up to $750,000, and that's for R&D. So you might have a product already, but you can use that money to tweak it, right? So, okay, I've been using my product with Rockwell in some type of, automation. We're reading the data there and we're securing that data. But now the Air Force wants me to do it in a bus unit on an aircraft. And I've never worked with a bus unit on an aircraft. So I got to learn how to do that. I have to learn how to take what I've already had and tweak it to solve it specifically for the United States Air Force. Along with that, what Ryan was saying, it comes compliance, right? So there's different compliance and regulations and standards you have to meet. So you can use some of that money and you can have champions within the Air Force going through phase 2 that can help you get to that compliance level, which is great, right? Because if you're a company, getting those types of certifications can be very, very expensive and very, very, very lengthy. So the DoD is really helping you pay for that type of compliance or certifications, as well as teeing it up for you. So those are kind of the opportunities that come with the SBIR, the opportunities and compliance.
I have so many questions, but hey, I know there's a Brian out there. I need you to put a question in the chat. And he's a corporate guy. So one of the things when you're going through the AeroX or other CTC, all the different resources, defense, DIU, we talk about use cases. And Gwen, I know you want people when they come to you to have these ready. What kind of tips do you have for what you're looking for? What works best that you have seen for those coming to work with you at Rockwell?
Yeah, the best thing you can do is clearly understand your value proposition in context of a role. And if you're writing an email to me, put that in your very first sentence. This is what we do. We provide this to these people so they can do this. There's a couple different methods for that. There's a lean launch method. There's a design thinking hill method. You should know that off. When I introduced myself earlier, what did I say? I said, I help innovators make their ideas a reality, right? Like you should be able to have that in a sentence that rolls off your tongue. It sounds like in defense, and I know this area, that it is incredibly hard to find these customers and get meetings with them, right? So don't squander the opportunity. Have your communication ready. And by that, I mean, understand the applicable roles and the value that it brings to those roles. Beyond that, like what value do you bring to the middle person that you're talking to? Is that person motivated to find technologies? Is that person motivated to solve a different problem? Like, what are you going to do for that very first person? And what is their motivation to get it through, right? And also understand that whoever you're talking to is probably not the decision maker. That person is going to have to retell your story to
Excellent.
several other people, right? So you need to make it as easy as possible for them to tell your story. This is the very foremost book I recommend on that topic, The Compelling Communicator. When I left my office for lockdown 2 years ago, there are 3 books out of the 100 books I have in my office. There are 3 books I brought with me, and this was one of them. This will force you to, like Norb was saying, really look inward and figure out your value, and then look outward and figure out how does that apply to defense? How does it apply to different roles? And it might sound like communication piece might sound fluffy. It is hard work. If you're doing this right, figuring that out is hard work, and it's so important. I know exactly if somebody is talking to me who has done this hard work, it's very clear, and it just dramatically increases the likelihood that you'll make headway.
Oh, that's excellent advice. I've worked with many startup companies, and it's like you can hear it right away. Somebody who's done that homework, they know their value proposition, they know the solution, versus another company I have in mind where they think they solve every problem, and you're supposed to connect the dots and figure it out. And what I heard you say is, no, don't do that. Make it simple for me to go to the next layer. And particularly when you hear about Ryan talking about all the different layers, you have to make it easy for them to communicate. Norb, what else would you add to that, and how do you help?
I was going to jump in on this one because I think,
so. I saw you rubbing your ears.
I mean, I think strategically, you're a small business, you're focused on getting this technology advanced. I think there's a fork in the road, and the fork in the road may be to go after the commercial marketplace, or the fork in the road may be to go after the federal marketplace or the Department of Defense. And that's an inflection point where you as a business have to make a decision. One client I'm working with right now, we determined, 18 months ago, that let's put on the back burner going after the federal marketplace and DoD, and let's mature the technology and capability and use case in the commercial marketplace. We did that. Now it's time to go back and revisit how are we going to approach the federal marketplace, and that's exactly what we're doing, because it's an investment, it's time, it's money, it's effort of the entire organization, and I think you have to be really prudent about where you're going to put your investment, where you're going to put your time, and that commercial success will only parlay into more relevance, better opportunities in government and defense.
I'm glad you put it like that, Norb. Especially, the fork in the road is a good analogy. And then for some companies that are on listening, and I know it was for us, it wasn't the fork in the road. It was like the next off ramp for a new line of revenue, right? So we already had the commercial customers, we were already working with them. But then as we learned about these opportunities, like, wow, we were missing out on a lot of really strong opportunities that could potentially change the landscape of our business and what we're doing, and bring in new revenue streams that we had never even thought of. So no matter where your company is, kind of in this life cycle or its maturity level, its commercialization, whether in the commercial world or the federal world, I definitely think there are always opportunities out there.
Elizabeth, we had a couple of questions. I thought this might be good.
Excellent.
I'm
Go ahead.
So first off, there were no open topic phase ones offered by AFWorks this cycle. Any word on if they will come back next cycle, or are they shifting towards specific solicitations for phase one? Does anyone know that?
I mean, I think that's a good question. I would be really surprised if they don't come back to open topics. I think it's just it's just depends on the need at any given time as they roll into these cycles, right? So I would think that we'll see them, come back to open topics, but I think there will be times where they go to specific solicitation. It just is going to be dictated by what they see as the need. But that's also something that I could probably circle back internally at DIU and see if there is some sort of defined shift around that.
Right. And so that's a great point to bring up. So if you decide to apply to the AeroX program and you go through it, and let's say, by the end of the cohort, by the time the next release comes out in March, or, in Q2 of this year, there isn't an open topics, that's fine, because we're still going to walk you through your deck. We're still going to get you ready. Like Brian said, get all your ankle biters out of the way. We're going to get you registered for everything you need to be registered to. So when that next open topics comes in, you'll be ready to go.
So a question for Elizabeth or Michael. Someone just applied for AeroX. First part of the question, will there be a confirmation email? And two, you mentioned support during the program. What sort of support does the program provide? Thank you.
Right. So we're starting to get our applications in. We've gotten a few in the last few weeks. We will be reaching out to you starting today and next week. We wanted to have this event kicked off. So thank you for your application. The support comes in many forms, whether it's our partner organizations or technical expertise of what we've done. But Elizabeth, do you want to go through some of, how we work with CTC and some of our other support mechanisms?
Well, the other support we offer is some coaching, but it's a lot of introductions. And actually, I think one of the best things, and I'm just looking in my notes for what to call it, and I can't remember, and you know this, Michael, when you walk through, it's not your use case, but it's the capability statement. So that's actually another key piece that if you haven't done that, we'll make you do it and you'll get feedback from it. So there's and I would also say, since I ran a different accelerator, we're not the typical accelerator. This is free, that we're not taking any equity, and it's like 8 weeks, 1 hour a week, and you're going to have multiple people you're connected to, and then you can roll into them CTCs where they're going to pay you, and then you have to apply. So it's really awesome. We're more like an open resource.
Yeah, I mean, Elizabeth and I have referred it to as like the AeroX Club before, right? So once you're in, you kind of get the knowledge base that we've all gathered over decades of experience, right? So yes, it's state resources, the CTC and with ForwardWorks and introductions to, universities if you need them with Whitewater and Oshkosh and, whatever you might want to pursue. But it's also, the decades of knowledge that Norm and everybody at Defense Alliance has, the DIU, contacts to corporate partners, but then also walking away with, not only deliverables, but tangible things like your quad chart that we help you create, with your capability statement that we help you create, all things that you'll need going forward, however you decide to pursue your kind of defense journey.
All right, there's 5 minutes left. Is there another question, Margaret, or not?
No, not right now.
Okay. So last question, and unless something else comes in, is I sort of had this finish the sentence for everybody. In terms of this demystifying and finding your customer, knowing your value proposition, use cases, all the different things you have to do, what's one of your favorite sort of tips you'd like to give people in working with, I'll say your organization, because we do have corporate and defense on the line. Norm, I'll start with you.
Yeah, Elizabeth, could you pull up my chart?
Oh,
That's
yes,
the working with
can.
you chart?
Yep.
And
I can
I
scroll
think
to it. Which one? This one?
the other one,
All right.
that one, perfect. In terms of the Defense Alliance and what we do and how we do it, we're really process focused with our clients. And again, this is a service that's available to you. It's no charge because it comes through the Small Business Administration. And so you can kind of look at this chart and see the three phases: the assessment phase, the commercialization phase, and then the metrics. We tie all three things together in our journey with a particular customer. And really what we're driving at with our clients is the readiness, willingness, enableness of them in terms of really being ready to go to market. So this is the process we follow. This is the support mechanism we try to bring to our clients. Hope that helps.
Yes, it did. Awesome. Thank you. Gwen? Favorite tip to help businesses?
Yeah, just in closing, one thing that really struck me recently was a reach out I got that clearly stated like a shared mission with Rockwell. Embedded in their communications, it was clear that their company and our company, like our whys were the same. When you think of the Simon Sinek, the why TEDx, right? Like, and even if the technology isn't a direct match, if we come across a company that has that shared why, that can open a lot of doors.
Thank you. Awesome. Great book too. And I'll end with you, Michael, but Ryan.
I think that was an awesome one, Gwen, one I'll say, because I think the shared mission is like, that's just a powerful message no matter what. The one that I had in my mind when you asked that is ruthless prioritization, right? I think, figuring out, it can be really easy to get overextended trying to find your way in here when you're talking about doing business with the DoD, because there are so many different entry points. And so I think figuring out, kind of like Gwen said before, really knowing what your differentiation is and that problem that you solve, and marrying that to the right, the right, subset of opportunity within the Department of Defense. And it'll take a little bit of legwork to get there, but then just prioritizing and driving your solution into that opportunity set, I think is really important. Because other than that, it can be really easy to get overextended. And as you try and work in, if you try and take every route into DoD, I think you dilute your differentiation by doing so, right? And you lose some of the core value prop that you probably bring to the table. So yeah, that's what I'd offer there.
Excellent. Love it. Ruthless prioritization, know your why. And Michael, you get like 3 words, maybe.
There is a place for you. So, whether it's working with Adam Aerospace, we love to collaborate with large companies, with small companies, there is a place for you. Whether it's you're thinking if SBIR is even right for you, for these open topics going forward, there probably is a place for you. And then obviously with working with your resources here with AeroX, CTC, there is a place for you.
Yes, and our next cohort begins February 10th. You can reach out to any one of us. I think the other message I'd like to get across is Wisconsin has a plethora of resources. That can be both good and bad because there's multiple doors, just like defense, to go in. But everybody, is there to help you and direct you. I actually believe it's a myth that we're not connected. We actually have a very strong network, and Tech Hub is leading the way in helping do that. And so if you bump into one person, they're going to invite you and introduce you to somebody else. So we hope that you walk away thinking, okay, this isn't as daunting. I can prioritize this. I just have to walk through the steps and make a decision. So thank you very much. We'll stay on for a couple minutes if we can to answer any questions, but otherwise have an awesome afternoon and thank you for joining us. And
Yes, thanks everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
thank you,
Hey,
Gwen.
Gwen.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Ryan.
When
Thank you.
someone was asking what the
Yeah.
name of the book was that you
Oh,
had recommended again.
yeah, it's called The Compelling Communicator.
I looked it up on YouTube because I've read a lot of books.
There's
and I haven't read that
also, if you're
one.
not a book person, this is the single best training I've ever taken in my life. I was fortunate to be one of the first at Rockwell. We've trained thousands of people, and there's an online version it used to be $500, worth every penny. The presenter is compelling, as you would expect. But 5 years later, I feel like I could recite the entire training. It was just so memorable and so impactful. Another one in the startup space that I highly recommend is the mom test. So this is a great way to learn from your customer conversations.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll bring that into AeroX actually.
Yeah.
I think then. So
There
thank
you
you
go.
for that.
And for those of you who've applied to AeroX, we will be reaching out very, very soon.